everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're exploring something a little different. It's a hymn, but not the kind you'd normally think of. It's called Hymn 8, and it was written by an Indian spiritual leader, Chithambaram Ramalinga Swamy.
It's a really fascinating piece. More than just a song, really. It's almost like a guide for personal transformation. Blends poetry and philosophy, and even a sense of urgency.
You're right about that urgency. It starts with a line that really grabbed my attention. Hurry, hurry, for there is an end that awaits you here. It's not exactly a gentle invitation, is it?
No, not at all. More like a wake-up call, reminding us that we don't have forever, and that there are things we need to do while we're here.
It definitely makes you stop and think. And then it goes on to say in the next verse, I speak the truth, do not have any other thoughts. Feels like it's setting the stage for something important.
Oh, absolutely. It's like he's clearing away all the distractions, all the clutter, and saying, listen up, this is crucial.
That idea of focus, it feels so relevant today with all the information overload we're all dealing with.
Oh, it's so true. We're bombarded with messages and notifications constantly, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to find that inner stillness these days, that space to connect with truth.
So true. Okay, moving on to verse 3. There's this line, even youth, no matter how lively, will eventually fade away.
A bit of a reality check.
Yeah. Nothing stays the same forever.
Right. And that includes us. It's like that saying, change is the only constant. And aging, well, that's a natural part of life. But I think this verse is pointing to something deeper, too. That feeling of impermanence, it touches everything.
I think you're right. That idea of impermanence can be a little daunting, but it can also be freeing. You realize you don't have unlimited time, so it makes you want to make the most of every moment.
Exactly. It helps us to let go of things.
Yeah.
Things that don't really matter, the grand scheme of things.
Okay, get ready, because verse 4 gets a little mystical here. It says, even the dead will rise, and there will be miracles performed. I have to admit, this one left me scratching my head a bit.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? Now, it's important to remember the context here. Ramalinga Swamy was writing from a specific cultural and spiritual background. Rebirth and enlightenment were very important concepts in his tradition.
So maybe it's not about a literal rising from the dead, more of an inner transformation.
Exactly. Think of it as a metaphor for waking up, waking up to a higher reality, like unlocking possibilities we never even imagined.
Breaking free from our limitations.
That's a great way to put it. Shedding those layers of self-doubt and fear that hold us back.
So there's hope, even amidst all these reminders about life's fleeting nature. Okay, verse 5 brings in this idea of a great sage. Only the great sage, the one with the perfect will, can achieve everything. Does this mean we're all destined to become miracle workers?
Well, I wouldn't say it's about literal miracles. It's more about recognizing the incredible potential that exists within each of us. It's a journey, you see. A journey of self-discovery and growth.
I like that. Not about comparing ourselves to some perfect ideal. It's about recognizing our own capacity for transformation.
Absolutely. It's a unique journey for each of us, shaped by our own choices and actions.
And then verse 6 feels especially relevant today. This moment that is coming can be yours to grasp.
Well, it ties in beautifully with what we were discussing about focus earlier. If we're always caught up in the past or worrying about the future, we miss out on the power of the present.
It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and lose sight of that. Okay, on to verse 7. And wow, what imagery. Like the shore that softens and erodes, tears will flow from the eyes.
Beautiful, isn't it? It reminds us that experiencing the full spectrum of emotions, both joy and sorrow, is part of what makes us human. Just like the shoreline is constantly shaped by the waves, so are we shaped by life's experiences.
And there's a sense of acceptance there too, right? Recognizing that it's all part of the journey.
Absolutely. It's about allowing ourselves to feel those emotions fully, without judgment.
Love that. Okay, we've arrived at the final verse, verse 8. In the end, when compassion moves, you will realize the divine within. This feels like the culmination of everything we've been discussing.
It really does, doesn't it? This verse suggests that compassion is the key. It unlocks that deeper level of awareness, that connection with the divine spark within us. But what does that actually look like? How do we cultivate that compassion? And how does it lead to transformation?
Those are great questions, and I think we should explore them further in the next part of our deep dive. Listeners, what are your initial thoughts on this hymn so far? What images or phrases stand out to you? We'll be back after a short break to dive even deeper into these themes of impermanence, truth, transformation, and compassion.
Welcome back. So we were talking about compassion being the key to, kind of unlocking something divine within us.
It's a beautiful idea, but how do we actually cultivate compassion? Especially in a world that doesn't always feel very compassionate.
Yeah, that's a really important question. You're right, it can be tough, especially in a world that often feels so focused on, individual success and competition. But I think that's exactly why Ramalinga Swamy's message is so powerful. It's a reminder that real fulfillment doesn't come from isolating ourselves. It comes from recognizing our interconnectedness. Our connection with everyone and everything.
It's about shifting our perspective from me to we. But how do we actually make that shift in a practical way?
Well, for me, it starts with mindfulness.
Yeah.
Becoming more aware of our own thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
and our reactions to things. A lot of times, our lack of compassion, it comes from our own inner struggles.
Yeah.
Our own insecurities and fears. So by working on our own inner peace, our own understanding, we're in a better place to extend that same understanding to others.
That makes sense. It's like, what's that saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. If we're not taking care of ourselves, it's hard to truly be there for others.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, once we've built that foundation of self-compassion, we can start practicing extending it outwards. It doesn't have to be anything grand. It could be simply listening to someone who's having a tough time, offering a kind word to a stranger, or maybe donating to a cause you believe in.
Those small acts of kindness, they can really add up, can't they?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be some big dramatic gesture. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful. A smile, a hug, just listening without judgment.
This makes me think about what we talked about earlier with impermanence. Realizing that life is fleeting. I think that can also make us more compassionate.
Oh, you're so right. When we remember that everyone's facing their own challenges, including ourselves, it's easier to offer understanding and kindness. We remember that we're all in this together,
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the theme of truth. The hymn tells us to seek the truth. But with so much information out there these days, it can be hard to know what to believe.
It really can. Information overload is a real thing. It's easy to get caught up in echo chambers,
So how do we navigate all that and actually find our way to truth? Does the hymn offer any guidance?
Well, I think that verse itself, I speak the truth, do not have any other thoughts. It points to the importance of mental clarity, of focus,
Yeah?
We need to be able to sort through the noise and figure out what's really important.
Developing that inner filter, that's a great way to put it.
Right, it's about questioning things, looking for evidence, being open to different perspectives. It's about seeking wisdom, not just information.
So it's an active process then, not just passively absorbing whatever we come across.
Exactly. It's about constantly learning and growing and being willing to let go of beliefs that no longer serve us. It's about having a discerning mind and a compassionate heart.
And that brings us back to spiritual transformation, doesn't it? It's not just about knowledge, but about allowing that knowledge to change us.
You got it. Remember that verse about the dead rising and miracles happening?
Yeah.
I think that speaks to the power of waking up to a higher reality. Shedding old ways of thinking and behaving,
Constantly evolving, like we're shedding old skins and stepping into new versions of ourselves. But how does that connect to the idea of the divine within that the hymn talks about?
I think the divine within, it's like this spark of potential. That inherent goodness and wisdom that's inside all of us. And through compassion, through seeking truth, through embracing the fact that everything's always changing, we let that divine spark shine brighter.
Uncovering parts of ourselves we didn't even know were there.
Exactly. And the more we connect with that inner truth, the more authentically we can live, and the more positive impact we can have on the world around us.
This conversation has been so inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling it too. But before we wrap up, you mentioned earlier some real-world examples of compassion.
I think it's really important to see how all this plays out in real life. After all, Hymn 8 isn't just some abstract philosophy, it's a call to action.
So in our next segment, let's look at some inspiring individuals who really embody these principles. Compassion, truth, and spiritual transformation. People who are making a real difference in the world. We'll see how they've done it and what lessons we can learn from them. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Hymn 8. We've been talking about some pretty deep stuff. Impermanence, truth, transformation, compassion, all that.
And now we get to see those ideas in action, Real people living these principles.
It's one thing to talk about compassion, but seeing it in the real world, that's something else.
Yeah.
So when you think about someone who really embodies compassion, who comes to mind?
Oh, wow, there are so many. But the first person I think of is Malala Yousafzai.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, her courage, speaking out for girls' education, even when it was so dangerous, that's true compassion in action. It's so inspiring.
She risked everything for what she believed in. And she's inspired so many people. It shows how compassion can really create change, even when things seem impossible. Right. And it's not just about feeling bad for people. It's about doing something, making the world a better place.
It's about realizing that we all have a part to play, that our choices matter.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we all have to be famous activists like Malala. Compassion can be expressed in so many ways. In our everyday lives, in our communities.
It's about making choices that reflect our values.
Exactly. Choosing fair trade products, volunteering, even just being kind to the people we meet.
Those little things can make a difference. They all add up.
They really do. And together, they can create a more compassionate world.
Be the change you want to see.
Right.
Right? Compassion isn't something that just happens. We have to make it happen.
You got it. And it's like a call to action. It's not just about reading these words, it's about living them.
It's a journey, for sure. And it's never over.
Absolutely. It's about constantly learning and growing, becoming more compassionate and truthful in everything we do.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into Hymn 8, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure talking about all this with you. Really inspiring stuff.
If you're interested in learning more about Ramalinga Swamy's work, we encourage you to check it out. There's so much wisdom there. And remember, the journey of transformation, it's always continuing. Keep seeking, keep asking questions, keep growing. Thanks for joining us.